Quite recently, I did a video exploring how Saitama would interact with members of the Z team from the world of Dispatch, and how those relationships would initially play out if he joined as their newest superhero. Well, that video focused on the interpersonal interactions our capability would share with the newly popular super team, but this video, as you've all been patiently waiting for, is going to be about how Saitama will directly affect the events of Dispatch's story, and how Saitama will fit within the narrative itself. What's Blonde Blazer going to think of him? How will Robert learn of Saitama's strength? Will Saitama defeat Shroud and become the face of SDN? All that and more in the video ahead, so click that like button once you feel the video deserves it. Two important notes before we begin are that I'll be looking at this through the lens of how Saitama's nature and abilities are portrayed within One Punch Man itself. This means that while he's capable of solving many things in the blink of an eye, aspects of his character such as his social awkwardness, timekeeping, lack of urgency, and downright unawareness causes many situations to unfold to levels and in ways that even someone of his power can unintentionally allow. This is what makes Saitama so much fun despite his strength, and One Punch Man so amusing overall, so maintaining that integrity is vital for imagining how Saitama's presence could affect Dispatch's story. The second is that this video expects you to have played through Dispatch and that you know its story, so there won't be any excess recapping. This video is going to be chunky, trust me. Starting things off, Saitama's involvement in Dispatch's main events won't begin until around halfway into the story. That's right, Saitama wouldn't be taking his first steps into the narrative until after the events of episode 3. Being a hero for fun who can be rather clueless to the world around him and the organizations which build hero careers, Saitama would have been operating in this world as a hobby hero, someone who saves the day from crime and catastrophe without doing so through legal channels or sticking around long enough to garner himself any kind of reputation. Between randomly saving the day in various areas of the city for an undisclosed amount of time, it's not hard to know what Saitama's been doing with all of his spare time during Dispatch's episodes 1 to 3. He'd have been here, and yeah, here, all completely oblivious to the fact that he's not anyone's favorite superhero, since not only does he never hang around after his hero work, but his spontaneous efforts are usually forgotten by the time a flashier story hits the news. Naturally, living such a lifestyle, he'd be pretty broke, pretty depressed, and out of the loop. Very similar to the start of One Punch Man's first season. However, on a fateful day at the edge of town where he lifted a crashed car out from the river to save a small group of people, he was then asked his name. Saitama was shocked to hear that no one had ever heard of him, not even when he repeated his name twice, 3 times. It was then that one of the rescued people mentioned to him that if he'd just been with SDN, then everyone would likely know who he was by now, and that he'd get a lot of hero benefits, like shop discounts to go with it. Hearing this, Saitama decided it was time to see about going pro. This brings about what I think is one of the most organic ways to fit Saitama into the narrative of Dispatch, with Robert having to cut either Sonar or Coupe from the Z team at the end of episode 3. The beginning of episode 4 is where Blonde Blazer offers the option of a depressed Phenomena Man or an experienced water boy to Robert Robertson, team leader and dispatcher of Z Team. It'd be around this point in time that Saitama would have been admitted into SDN's ranks as their most recent hero, a bald newbie who nobody knows much about, other than he's some guy who lifted a car out from a river and had a good word put in for him by various bystanders, which happened to be very helpful since his hero questionnaire score didn't do him any favors. As SDN's newest hire and someone who they believe to be a borderline average super strength type hero with less than ideal intelligence, Saitama is without a team to fit into, nor does he fit the experience requirement for the more regular teams at SDN. Thus, Blonde Blazer, with her limited knowledge on Saitama coupled with her limited places to put him, offers the baldy up as a third option to Robert, fronting him as a rookie with strength-based powers. Now, for the sake of this video, we'll say that Phenomena Man seemed unreliable due to his current mindset, and Waterboy's general demeanor felt too shaky to trust out in the field yet, which eventually left Saitama as Robert's preferred option, which he'll choose later on. Since the newest member doesn't join the team until the dispatching after, this would leave Saitama out from the initial dispatch section post-cutting of Sonar or Coupe. I'd like to think in this period of time, while Z-Team are giving Robert a hard time for cutting one of their members, Saitama will be having a short meeting with Blonde Blazer, who as the branch leader would be informing Saitama of Z-Team's villain reforming purpose and how interacting with a dispatcher goes, provided Robert chooses him. Through no fault of her own, Blazer likely won't see Saitama as anything more than a regular superhero, yet would still give the friendly and professional welcome expected from her, peppering in encouragement with that charming enthusiasm of hers. No kiss though. Saitama being Saitama will most likely not have much to say, while either carrying a rather thoughtless smile on his face throughout with a dumb question here and there, or perhaps zoning out if Blazer begins to rattle hostile on, both of which will leave Blazer with the impression that he seems a little absent-minded and awkward, but ready to go. From her reports, she knows he has enough strength to lift a car, but outside of that, he's something of an unknown with no real pedigree. This, mixed in with the lack of time SDN had in general to admit Saitama into the program, effectively left his hero profile looking something like this for Robert to evaluate later on. And so after the problematic dispatching where Robert was a member down due to the cut and one of the members ditching early, the SDN break room is where Robert then throws a serving of noodles across Flambae's head to teach him a lesson for bullying Waterboy. With Blazer's arrival to stop any escalation, she then prompts Robert to make his choice for Z-Team's new member, and it's here that he chooses Saitama. After stating that he seems like a good enough guy, Blazer says she'll let him know to come and say hi before the first dispatch out with the team. Once she leaves, a few moments later, Saitama walks into the break room with a concerned look on his face, asking Robert as he met him for the first time if that guy out there in the hallway knows he has noodles all over him. It's here that Robert would tell Saitama that Flambae's a member of his new team, and that he just had a little accident. After exchanging introductions, Robert mentions he's heard that Saitama is apparently somewhat strong. Then to try and get a gauge for what he's working with, he asks Saitama how he got his strength. Was he born with super strength? Does he use technology? Maybe magic? Scoffing at such ideas, Saitama takes on a serious look and reveals to Robert what he's been wanting to know. How he got strong? The result of 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and a 10-kilometer run every single day for 3 years. It's then that Robert looks at him cynically and asks if that's really it, to which Saitama proudly confirms before taking his leave, somewhat eager for his first professional dispatch. Robert, still in the break room, sighs after having heard what got Saitama his level of strength. Instead of choosing a superhero, he might have accidentally chosen a CrossFitter, and maybe he should have gone with someone who has high levels of real super strength, like Flambae Man. Before the second shift of the day gets underway, Robert briefly introduces Saitama to the Z-Team. As you can imagine, he doesn't exactly come off well to the former villains, standing there in his rather goofy costume with an unassuming look on his face and the ceiling light reflecting off his head. Robert, he's bald. It's very likely they'll begin making fun of him while he stands there with a slightly annoyed look, hearing various ball jokes slide around the room while they simultaneously complain about how SDN cut one of their teammates just to give them some random guy instead. Not feeling particularly welcome, whatever amount of excitement Saitama had for the shift more or less nosedives, and he can pretty clearly see why most of these used to be villains. And so, as Robert calms the room down and they all prepare to perform the second part of their duties, Saitama's relieved to be starting soon. He's never really been a guy for team-ups, and yet here he is, shoehorned into a team of people who don't seem to like him. As they're walking out, Saitama will realize that Flambae is the guy he saw earlier, and then genuinely ask what happened to his eyebrows. Flambae, taking it the wrong way, will just brush him off and walk away. Yeah, fuck you. Try not to fucking break out there, Humpty Dumpty, okay? Yeah, he knew he didn't like team-ups for a reason. With the shift getting underway, Robert would know that since Saitama's not only a newer hero and is also someone with some pretty humble stats, especially since he's not sold on him yet, Robert opts to keep Saitama away from tough calls. Low risk, mundane jobs to help bed him in and throwing him in as tag-along to missions where others specialize in. Pretty similar to how I'd imagine many of you used Waterboy when you first recruited him if you opted for him instead of Flambae Man. It's here that Saitama would probably begin to think he made a mistake. These jobs would be boring to him, and while he usually beats everything in one punch anyway, these missions would feel more like chores and errands than actual hero work. Is this what professional hero work is like? He'd wonder to himself, tolerating the Z-Team's rudeness toward him over the voice comms while Robert tries to keep everyone focused, checking in on Saitama every so often, who would respond back unenthusiastically. However, toward the end of the shift, word of a monster attack would spread, and having everyone occupied but Golem and Saitama, he'd send them to deal with the situation. Robert makes sure to let Golem know to keep an eye on Saitama since it sounds dangerous, and that he's not got anyone else to send as more experienced backup, while Saitama would start to look a little more alive at the thought of fighting something which could be tough. Although, once they get there, they realize it's a baby kaiju, albeit still something not to take lightly and capable of harm. With Saitama noting it looks pretty young, he observes Golem step forward before he makes his own move, and surprisingly, even though he's been told this is a team of former villains trying to become heroes, Saitama watches as Golem kindly takes to the infant kaiju with a warmth he hadn't expected to see. As Golem adopts the baby monster in real time with their shift soon coming to an end, Saitama stands in the background with a small but sincere smile at the inspiring sight from someone wanting to become someone better. Maybe there's a chance this team won't turn out to be so bad after all. This brings us to the end of the episode 4, where Robert decides for the night whether to go to dinner with Blonde Blazer, go to the movies with Invisigal, or find Saitama to see how his first day at SDN went. If I were Robert, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, Saitama. Sorry. Moving into episode 5 territory, Saitama will be looking for Robert before the first shift of the day to ask him for more interesting assignments, since he didn't think professional hero work would be running errands for people. It's here that he runs into the back end of Flambae and Robert's conversation after Robert needed spotting with his bench press. Hearing the end of their talk as Robert takes his leave, Saitama asks Robert what that was all about between him and Flambae. Robert tells him that Flambae was just saying that people can't become heroes without any powers, to which Saitama would raise a brow and say, why not? Robert would be taken back for a moment from Saitama's blunt yet genuine response, and before he could respond, Saitama would tell Robert that if he wants to become a hero, then he should find a way to become one, and who would anyone else be to tell him that he couldn't? Although, before Robert can really form a response, Saitama puts his hand on Robert's shoulder, and with that empty-headed smile on his face, he says that it's time to start giving him some real hero jobs out there, to which Robert just laughs and says, we'll see how it goes. However, while Saitama will not be lucky enough to get any exciting fights on this shift, he will be given more responsibility after that chat with Robert. When some Vango workers are trapped in a station's tunnel and time is of the essence, the only people available at the time are Punch-Up and Saitama. Knowing Punch-Up has got some strength behind him and Saitama's profile says he's pretty strong himself, Robert makes the best of what he can and sends the both of them to rescue the workers. Punch-Up and Saitama arrive at the station, and Punch-Up prepares to take the lead before witnessing Saitama begin removing the rubble at an alarmingly fast rate. Chunks and chunks of debris being removed before Punch-Up can barely move one. Stunned, Punch-Up says what any 3-foot Irishman would say at the sight of Saitama moving faster than a speedster with strength to make heavy chunks of debris look like feathers. Fuck me, you're fast. Rescuing the workers before Punch-Up can follow up with any questions about Saitama's display, the caked baldy says he needs the restroom and that he'll see him later, then bolts off, leaving Punch-Up standing there processing Saitama's physical power. What the fuck? After the first shift, Saitama will hear the Z-Team taking bets on what superhero Robert used to be, then inquire as to what exactly they mean. When they mention that a lot of SDN workers used to be superheroes before becoming dispatchers, Saitama keeps a note of it, especially because of his earlier talk with Robert. But when they ask him which hero he thinks Robert could be, Saitama tells the truth. He didn't really know the names of any heroes before he joined SDN. Later, into the second shift of the day, Torrance starts to experience blackouts due to Red Ring influence, which causes Saitama to get lost since everything looks the same to him when it's so dark. Not being able to partake in many jobs, Saitama being Saitama ends up trying to make heads or tails of where he actually is in between assignments, until suddenly he's called upon by Robert to intercept the Red Ring who are stealing shipments from a train. Robert insists that Saitama is the only guy available right now since all other Z-Team members are occupied, although he mentions that Saitama doesn't have to go on his own if he doesn't think he can handle it and that it would be dangerous. Robert can clearly tell from Saitama's profile that he's not strong enough to handle a group of Red Ring members by himself, so when Saitama insists that he'll check it out, Robert makes it very clear to Saitama to just hold out for as long as he can until he can get more heroes over there and to pull back if needed. Worried about Saitama's chances alone, he starts trying to see if any Z-Team members have completed their calls, only to get a call from Saitama, and he's saying that the job is done and that all of those weird guys who glow red are down. Robert, understandably confused, asks him to clarify. You're saying that you defeated a group of Red Ring, all on your own, to which Saitama just plainly responds with, yeah, well, they weren't that tough. What's the Red Ring anyway? After explaining to Saitama who the Red Ring are and what they do, Robert started to suspect that there's more to Saitama than meets the eye. Rechecking his profile briefly as the shift comes to an end, Chase peeks his head over the cubicle wall after overhearing, Robert, you telling me that bald newbie motherfucker beat a group of fucking Red Ring on his own? And Robert, nodding slowly and suspiciously, confirms that it's weird, but he did. With everyone suggesting to go for drinks at the Sardine to celebrate a successful shift, Saitama mentions he might be there, but he's really planning to get to the supermarket before closing to get the afternoon expiry deals. There's just one problem though. He doesn't know what part of the city he's in since the last mission put him somewhere he hadn't seen before. After some aimless wandering, he realizes that not only has he missed the sales, but he's late for team drinks too. Oh well, may as well go home, no need to visit the bar. On second thought though, he remembered how he'd been noticing everyone trying a little harder lately, and maybe he should put in a little more effort into this team thing too if if even former villains are trying to become worthwhile heroes. Maybe he will go to the bar, and when he turns up, everybody's fighting. Blood everywhere, tables and chairs broken, his teammates being flung left and right. Saitama's a little lost for words. He really doesn't know what's going on here, although as he looks more closely, he realizes a bunch of these guys fighting his teammates are glowing red, just like his last mission. Pointing with a smile because he finally gets what's going on, he says, "These are more of those red ring guys causing more trouble." And this is right about the time Armstrong is restraining Invisigal in the air with his metal arms. In the blink of an eye, a red-gloved fist punches upward in the center of the room, sending Armstrong flying through the ceiling and leaving a villain-shaped hole in the roof. "Stop bothering my teammate," Saitama says in deadpan fashion, arm still outstretched in the air while Invisigal falls free and looks up in surprise at the save. Both heroes and villains alike stopping for a moment at Saitama's punch, all eyes looking to the center of the bar. It's at this point one of the Red Ring members breaks the silence by shouting,
"Who the fuck is that guy? Who the fuck is that?"
Cutting to the scene where they're all getting takeout after, various members of the Z team would comment on how Saitama is stronger than he looks. Punch Up shouting, "I fucking knew it," due to what he had seen on a previous shift, with Robert noting he's starting to see how Saitama beat those Red Ring goons earlier by himself. Still, the Z team would be impressed by that small display, but wouldn't get overly carried away. After all, they're all aware of how strong Flambae Man is, and weren't starstruck by him when he joins them in dispatch if you select him. So despite this shocking them, one Armstrong launching punch wouldn't be a bow down to Saitama type moment for these rough and tumble former villains. Shortly after, this is where everyone would begin to introduce themselves properly, with Robert having the opportunity to reveal his hero identity. Going under the assumption that Robert reveals he's Mecha Man, everyone begins to gasp and comment on the revelation, with Saitama in the background going, "Who?" because this guy's oblivious to things not happening directly around him. Though he did remember hearing Robert used to be a hero, and is glad to see him choosing to put his trust in his colleagues the way they do in him. However, this is where Flambae gets a little fiery and tries to unleash some of his pent-up anger upon Robert. Now, this part would be easy for me to say Saitama steps in and shields Robert, because that's something he would do. However, something Saitama will do more if he sees the opportunity for it is letting someone else take another step to becoming a hero they're trying to be. Saitama watched Child Emperor fight against Phoenix Man while knowing he could defeat Phoenix Man himself at any moment, but he wanted to let Child Emperor learn, grow, and win for himself, all while being ready to step in on his behalf when needed. Saitama has also done something like this more than once, but I'm not going to overload you with extra examples. So here, as he gets ready to shield Robert, he sees Gollum motioning to move forward and lets him shield Robert the way he does already within the story, giving Gollum the moment to become more of the hero he's specifically trying to be as a member of Z Team. Saitama would put a hand on Flambae's shoulder, then tell him that's enough, heroes shouldn't fight each other, only for Flambae to shrug him off and then fly away as he did originally. Impressed, Saitama would tell Gollum that he did a good job, then assure Robert that he made the right decision, telling everyone his hero identity, and that Flambae probably just needs some time to cool off, but he'll come around. The start of episode 6 is where Royd and Robert try the new Astral Pulse prototype in the suit. Unfortunately, it explodes, which puts Robert in the infirmary. Hearing the news, Saitama comes to visit Robert, bringing some bananas to make him feel better and letting him know it's good to see that he's okay. With Saitama asking about what Robert's trying to achieve, he learns that as Mecha Man, Robert used a robot to be a hero and needs the Astral Pulse to return. Saitama takes on a serious look and says he knows a little something about fixing computers, so maybe this could help. Robert leans in. He never knew Saitama knew about robotics. Saitama asks him if he's tried turning it off and on again. One time he had a problem with a computer and that solved it. Robert's a good judge of character, so he'd know that despite it sounding stupid, Saitama's probably just trying to help. Robert changes subject and thanks Saitama for joining the team recently, for dealing with everyone's BS and helping out despite probably never, imagining himself being shoved into a team like this. That's when Saitama would say he was a bit worried about it at first, but the more he's teamed up with everyone, the more he's realizing it's not so bad. But the bald jokes still aren't funny. Later on in the episode is where we have the party, the famous party, and Saitama turns up with a bag of groceries which he brought on the way over because a great sale was on. Someone asks Robert if the bag is for Robert's housewarming gift, to which Saitama quickly informs them, no, these are my groceries. Okay, maybe he can have a packet of broccoli. We all know how the party goes though, and this video is beefy enough. enough. So fast forward through Saitama hanging out and having various little chats with members of Z-Team and SDN, and maybe some funny dancing with the ladies of Dispatch, the fallout with Chase and Vizzy over the plan to retrieve the Astral Pulse all of a sudden occurs as normal, with Saitama respectfully but awkwardly standing in the background while everyone argues. Tempers flare, the party ends, and everyone leaves. Even Saitama himself. Sure, we all know he could blast over there immediately, one punch everyone, nab the pulse, and it's done. But Saitama would think that he doesn't really know what he's looking for, wouldn't want to break it by accident, and also knows it's probably best to not undermine what Robert and Blazer had decided. Leaving the apartment, it goes back to just Robert and Chase as originally, with Vizzy soon making her move on the Astral Pulse regardless of the decisions made. Fast forward to Vizzy grabbing the pulse, then being interrupted by Shroud. This is where Chase would be forced to use his powers despite the risks. Or would he? Knock knock. Before Shroud appears, Saitama is back. Why? Well, he forgot about his bag of groceries and came back for it, which is when he finds out that Vizzy is at that warehouse located earlier and is now being taken down by gas. In this timeline, Chase doesn't need to run and won't go into a coma, and that's because Saitama is here. He'd tell Chase that he doesn't need to spend any more years of his life on his powers and to just leave it to him. Robert would protest and say there's no way Saitama could get there in time, no matter how much strength he has. That's when Saitama would tell him not to forget that he has a lot of experience in running. And in a flash, like Chase did, Saitama would bolt from Robert's apartment to Vizzy's location, a blur of that yellow, white, and red to whisk Vizzy away from danger and ensure her survival. Chase, Robert, and now Vizzy all know just how cracked Saitama truly is, or at least they know more than they did. This creates some new territory for episode 7. Chase is not in a coma, which means that the Z-Team will only be angry at Vizzy for going off on her own, not causing Chase's life to be in danger. This makes me feel the meeting at the start will not be as tense as how it is in the original timeline. Instead of it mostly being Robert, Gollum, and sort of Flambae backing up Vizzy, Saitama will be present too, and he will also show support to keeping her on the team. He'd remind them that while her actions weren't right, her intentions were in the right place, and she did what she thought would help someone else. And isn't that what a hero is supposed to do? Between Robert's leadership and Saitama's simple but effective reasoning, I think they'd cool the room down to a point which is definitely a lot better than it was when Chase was hurt. Invisigal will still storm out, given she has deeper issues to discuss with Robert, but the support from Saitama, and more importantly to her, Robert, would do wonders for her eventual outcome. This means that the shifts shouldn't be as down in the dumps as they originally were, since Vizzy is safe, Chase is safe, and Saitama was there to give Robert extra support in smoothing the meeting over. However, for the part of the episode where Robert goes to the Sardine, you can say he may not go, with Chase being fine. However, he still received that news from Vizzy regarding her involvement with the Red Ring and himself, so you could say perhaps he went for a drink to try and process that information instead, which leads him to being captured by the Red Ring and Shroud regardless. Blonde Blazer would turn up and save him, just like in the usual events too. I'm sure word of Saitama being a little more than just strong would have reached her by this point, but with time on the line, Robert kidnapped, let's just say she rushed over to help Robert without consulting anyone to avoid getting there too late, and things end for that episode as expected. This brings us to the final episode, number 8, with Red Ring making their play upon the city of Torrance in one last attempt. With attacks and situations occurring all over the city, it's going to take more than just Saitama to resolve all of the incidents at once during the dispatch section. However, what's clear is that no matter how difficult it was in the original story, it would go a lot smoother for the dispatchers with Saitama here. Not only does he have his new stats available after they've been updated from the various dispatching efforts and cutscene moments we explored, but if he's sent to fight the traitorous Sonar or Coupe, all it's going to take is one interaction to shut them up for the entirety of the dispatch section if Saitama is sent over there. No, that doesn't mean he's going to punch them into 10 different pieces, but it does mean he's going to hit them hard enough to keep them out of the game without killing them, and they either come back for the final battle or they wake up several hours after the night is done. Granting that Saitama doesn't have any connection with this member since they were cut before he met them, I was initially going to say that he'd defeat them and then bring them back to say that they should apologize to their former teammates for what they've done, but I actually think since he has zero connection to them, it's more likely that after he beats them that he just literally walks off, because that is the type of thing he's done with non-monster villains before. On other notes, Vizzy returns to help out, Saitama fights alongside Blazer, Flambae Man and Waterboy a few times, and overall it's a pretty rough experience for the Red Ring. With the final battle looming, there's two ways to go through it, but I'll get the more boring one out of the way quicker. If Saitama arrives at the main battle's time, like everyone else, this is going to be a very short war. Toxic, the other guys, even Shroud Spiderbot, let him predict all he wants, he ain't stopping a damn thing when this bald head is coming at him. No one is bothering Saitama at all. So, just for the people who really want me to say Saitama punches everyone out in the Red Ring and uppercuts the Spiderbot to the clouds, yes, if Saitama is here on time, this entire fight is wrapped up before you know it. Vizzy doesn't get shot, Robert doesn't need to make a ballsy play, Beef gets cuddles from people who aren't threatening to kill him. In short, the Red Ring is getting torn apart, and you can take that phrasing however you want. So, scenario 1, Saitama gets here on time, then the display of the century is performed within the Dispatch universe, and everyone is watching there going, what the fuck? But, let's say he's a little late. Classic Saitama style. Got caught up somewhere on the way back with something. Maybe a civilian in danger, maybe dropped his wallet, whatever. This would leave the battle to start and then play out the way it does initially, with various members of the Z team fighting the likes of Armstrong, Toxic, Shroud Spider-Mech, also Robert teaming up with Bomb Blazer to take on either Sonar or Coupe. These events will progress as normal up to the point where Saitama would then arrive on the scene from the outskirts of the battle. Seeing Mecha Man take on the large Spider-Mech, Saitama would begin to make his way forward, but not at the expense of interrupting what he knows to be Robert's pivotal obstacle in life right now. On his way, Armstrong's going to see Saitama and say, it's time for me to get my revenge on you. Only for Saitama to say, have we met before? Because he probably doesn't even remember what the guy he punched through the ceiling looked like, only to then punch him again and take him out immediately. It's around this point that Saitama will notice Robert's in a tough spot, and that it's time for him to get involved. As Shroud prepares to fire off his massive beam attack, Saitama will burst into the picture from the side and deliver a mech-shattering punch which completely knocks it on its side and wrecks most of its internal functions. Similarly to how Shroud never saw a super chase coming, it'd be a few possibilities here as to why Saitama took him off guard. The first being he simply wasn't aware of Saitama being anything to write home about since he never had direct eyes on him. The second being any reports from Red Ring members about Saitama not being able to accurately represent how strong Saitama actually is since he holds back against humans. The third being Saitama is unquantifiable, so predicting him is impossible anyway by the, nature of how his character works against funky abilities like that. And finally, fourth, even if Shroud did account for him, he still wasn't able to react to him anyway. With Shroud flattened, the rest of the Z team grabbed the opportunity to mobilize once more and take the advantage, with Saitama taking the moment to see Robert in his Mecha Man suit. With Robert saying you arrived just in time, Saitama would smile and say back, so this is the Mecha Man suit, pretty cool. Robert would confirm and Saitama would turn to walk away, but before doing so he'd add, I'd say this means you could get back to being a hero again, but you've already been one this whole time. Now let's beat this Shroud freak together. Absolute cinema. With Shroud's mech starting to crawl back, barely, everyone teams up to take care of the job. Saitama floating around the sidelines and helping out anyone who needs it while allowing them to truly feel what it means to be a hero, to fight for their friends and for the future of the city around them. Sure, Saitama could do all this himself, but letting these former villains experience what it truly means to fight tooth and nail for something other than themselves is a moment of growth for them, more important than having Saitama do it for them. And he'd know that, and equally important for Robert to finally overcome his greatest enemy at the last hurdle without Saitama taking over. From here, it's up to you to decide if you think Shroud's defeat will lead him to being able to take Beef hostage. If Chase is alive and well, wouldn't Beef be with him? And if Shroud does nab Beef, well, Saitama will speed blitz him instantly to secure the dog, which would leave Shroud at Robert's mercy. Regardless of how the final confrontation with Shroud and Robert looks like and how it goes, when Robert has the chance to kill Shroud, Saitama will be watching to see what he does. And since in my save Robert was a good lad and didn't go for the kill, I'm going to assume the same of him here. And with Robert deciding to show mercy and allow Shroud to be taken away by the authorities, it would solidify what Saitama had come to think of him after working with him all this time, that Robert really is a true hero, with or without his suit. With Vizzy a hero, the cut team member being forgiven, Robert back to his best, and the Z team the heroes of the day, everyone would now know that Saitama is the real effing deal. Finally, he'd be getting his props from people as they compliment him on what he did, how he helped turn the tide, maybe a little jab here and there about being late, but everyone would know that despite what they initially thought of him, there's no one you'd rather have on your side. Blonde Blazer would approach him and say for a newbie, he's far more than anyone could have ever imagined, and that SDN's gonna need to figure out what to do with him from here on out. Phenomenon Man, on the other hand, is excited to meet another person so strong, and may even suggest some friendly sparring or competitive lifting to see who really is stronger between the two. I'd have thought it'd be pretty obvious from what he did in that fight, but it's Phenomenon Man we're talking about, so he might not quite grasp it yet. And so, with Saitama in the group photo at the end celebration, the question is, what would come after this? Well, that's where you come in, because I've got no creative energy left in me after this, so I want you to tell me how you'd think things would go from here, and what you thought of this video overall. Thank you for watching, leave a like and comment since this took a lot of effort, and hopefully I'll see you around for future videos. This, however, has been What If Saitama Was in Dispatch.